Robert and I are suckers for alliteration. It's awful. Like you get into one of like when we're building stuff for our own internal use, or when we're building out these kind of models and whatnot.
Hello and welcome to episode 248 of the Rockstar CMO effing marketing podcast. It's Saturday the 14th of December. I hope you've had a good week and you're well and you're staying as sane as you feel you need to be. I'm your host Ian Truscott. I'm not a rockstar, but I am a CMO. And on this podcast, I chat with chums and share our marketing street knowledge that we hope will bring out the rockstar marketer in you. Come say hello. You can find us at rockstarcmo.com or Rockstar CMO on LinkedIn. This week, I'm joined by Cathy McKnight to discuss persona development in her monthly visit to the studio. And Robert is back from his travels, back on form, and back in our virtual bar for a cocktail and a marketing talk. But first, we need to pay the bar tab. I'll be back in a moment.
We'll be right back.
We'll be right back.
Is it time to reimagine your future? The right business skills may make a difference in your career. At Capella University, we offer a relevant education that's designed to focus on what you need to know in the business world. We'll teach professional skills to help you pursue your goals, like business management, strategic planning, and effective communication. And you can apply these skills right away. A different future is closer than you think with Capella University. Learn more at capella.edu.
This episode is brought to you by LifeLock. The holidays mean more travel, more shopping, more time online, and more personal info in places that could expose you to identity theft. That's why LifeLock monitors millions of data points every second. If your identity is stolen, their US-based restoration specialist will fix it, guaranteed or your money back. Get more holiday fun and less holiday worry with LifeLock. Save up to 40% your first year. Visit LifeLock.com/podcast. Terms apply.
Right, on to our first segment, the Marketing Studio, with Cathy McKnight, the Chief Solver of Problems at the Content Advisory. Welcome back to Rockstar CMO FM. Cathy, how are you?
I'm well, Ian. How are you?
I'm doing very well. Thank you very much. Thank you very much for making some time for me today. I know you've actually got a webinar coming up, but there's no point in us promoting it because it will be in the past by the time this goes public, because we're recording on Wednesday and this will go live on Saturday. But
but we'll include a link, right? So I'm talking this afternoon on content ops and orchestration with the Content Marketing Institute.
Yes, always a pleasure. And that's a bit of a theme then for this session with you, isn't it? About webinars. Well, we've got to start off with the weather, obviously, because I'm British, you're Canadian, we're obsessed with it. How is it? Did you get the snow you were hoping for?
Well, we did. So I was super excited because there was a whole bunch of snow on the weekend, even though it caused, traffic mayhem, chaos, which is already horrible. All these studies keep saying Toronto has the worst traffic in the world, which is, super reassuring. Yeah. And so I was really excited. And then the next morning we woke up and the temperature had risen overnight, and we literally watched the pack of snow just melt away. And now it is actually London weather. We're sitting at about 4 or 5 degrees, overcast, a bit damp. So I'd really appreciate if you take your weather back and we could get some winter weather going.
Yeah, well, yeah, we've got exactly the same thing. Grey and chilly, but not freezing. So normal, no weather is what I call it. I call it no weather because it's not really doing anything. So it's a bit disappointing. But yes, and I'm amazed. I didn't know that Toronto had some of the worst traffic in the world, and that's quite a high bar as well.
It really is. But our 401, if you just Google it, it's mayhem. There's just never a good time.
Really?
Yeah.
Yes, and also saying about the snow. I think Jeff had snow the other week. He's in Massachusetts. It snowed. He shoveled, and then it went away.
So we didn't even bother shoveling. We knew it was going to melt.
All right, so let's stick to the topic of this week, which again is webinars. So you're doing one this afternoon as we record this, but you did one already on November the 21st, which I watched and we did have some other things we were going to talk about end of year and predictions and stuff. But I really wanted to cover this topic with you, Cathy, because I think it's great for the Rockstar CMO audience. And the podcast was about personas, the missing link, unlock personas to drive results, and which I think was great. So I wanted to go through that. The first question I have for you is, I thought that personas are fairly standard practice. You and I probably go in and it's one of the first things we think about. But it was interesting. You shared some data that suggested that marketing and company performance were improved when companies have well-defined personas, which suggests that some people don't. So what was it at that first opening bit where you did that first research about why personas are important? What is it that you found there, Cathy?
So it's interesting that personas, kind of like governance, kind of like workflows, people are all in when you're doing them and they're excited and it's wonderful. And there are certain companies who excel. They adopt their personas. They're part of the conversation. They actually refer to them by, if they've named them or whatnot. And then there's other organizations, again, where they do them and then they never look at them again, right? It's kind of like, okay, great. Or they do them in isolation in their silo, right? So email marketing has personas and maybe communications has their personas and events have their personas. So they're not done at the enterprise level, which fine. I mean, a set of personas I think is probably better than none because at least it's a guiding tool for that subset. But really they need to be done at the master level, sort of that master data level, if I'm going to geek out a little bit, where they're done at the enterprise or brand level to say, here are at the high level. And then you build out according to that, right? So you build upon that depending on the use and the purpose and what you're looking to do and all of those things. And the other thing too is most that we've come across, personas are done, but they're really the purview and sort of kept cachet for marketing teams. And personas help everyone in the organization. They're not just for marketing, right? From designers, channel experts, sales teams, ops, having that line of sight and understanding into the type of individual or groups that you're talking to will inform them and help them do their jobs better. So really, one, they should not be created just by marketers. It is a broad spectrum of stakeholders that need to be included, particularly your customer service team, department, division, whatever it is, because they know more about your customer than anybody. They need to be informed by data, but they also need to be sort of like a 360 as you would do for a review of an employee, right? Is you've got to do the 360 on perception of customer. Yeah.
So I like that idea there. Well, I wondered whether we should actually define what a persona is, but I think that we pretty much know.
I think anybody listening probably knows what that is.
But there are some forks in the road there, and some people talk about creating them more kind of archetypes than personas. It depends on how you look at them, don't you? And some people really go down the route of job titles and people, and some people tend to cluster on need and stuff. So our guests will get into some detail around that kind of stuff. But one of the things about personas, I like what you're saying there, that we need one for our whole company, but some of the things aren't going to be relevant to us in marketing as, say, in the design of the product or in the UX team, right? So do you then have that one master and then they split out? Because I think sometimes marketing can get a bit distracted by trying to figure out how people can use the products. We really don't give a monkeys about that. What we want is what are the needs that the product is solving, and sometimes the product guys don't care about that so much. So where do you see that split?
Well, they should be, the product guys should absolutely.
I realized where I was going when I was finishing that.
But everything really needs to start with the audience, right? So again, that is another area where a lot of organizations go wrong, is they focus on the customer journey. And at the top level, they should be looking at the audience, or not journey, sorry, the customer persona, and they should be looking at the audience persona, because customer is a small subset of the stages across the entire journey, right? And you want to be able to build that persona from the, who is it that you're trying to engage with? So they don't even know who you are. You're just reaching them for the first time, all the way through to where they're advocates. And how you speak with them, how you engage with them, the experience that you deliver at each of those various stages, and the message that you're telling them is going to be different. So at the beginning, it's like, hey, we're here for you. You can trust us. We know you. We want to help you. Then you move into, they know who you are and they're starting to get a little more interested. It's like, okay, now that we've met and shook hands, here's why you like us. Like, here's what we can offer you in particular. Then you get into, okay, buy from us, right? That's the customer part of the journey. Yeah. And then it's, what else can we do for you? How can we do better for you now that you trust us and have engaged with us? So those are different experience. It's different messaging. So that top level really is about building the audience personas or segments that you're looking for, that you're really focused on. And then from there, you build it out based on, what you're trying to either make them feel, think, or do, what part of the journey that you're engaging with, and who you are from an organizational step.
Yeah, I really like that feel, think, or do thing. What I liked in the webinar, and I don't know if we were planning to cover this probably when we go through your process, was the way you were thinking, and I've done this as well, is you're thinking about, well, what is it that's going to take somebody from one buyer's journey stage to the next buyer's journey stage? So what are their needs at that very point, which I thought was really interesting that you were talking about that. And the other thing is the persona isn't just your buyer, is it? Because I think you were saying there are different personas who are going to be in your audience that might actually influence the buyer or might recommend you and all that kind. So you got to make sure you got your full audience mapped, haven't you, in all of this? Yeah.
Well, and that's why you start with the audience segment, right? Because not all your audiences are going to turn into customers.
No. But there are a bunch of people you want to be influencing out there who are going to help.
Correct.
I like that. So what I also liked about your presentation in the webinar is that you had 5 steps to success for building personas. And regular listeners will know that we love 5 effing things on this podcast. So, and also I really like it's alliteration, isn't it? I like the alliteration that you've got here about the 5 Ds.
Yeah, Robert and I are suckers for alliteration. It's awful. Like, you get into one of, like, when we're building stuff for our own internal use, or when we're building out these kind of models and whatnot. We are our own worst enemies because we are like totally all in on alliteration. It's awful sometimes because there's a few stretches sometimes, I got to admit. And because we're both into it, we're not good for each other that way.
I always used to be doing C's because I have a content background. So everything was like 4 C's or 5 C's or 3 C's. That was before I discovered art, because now I've got a TLA and I can only stick to this word, that's something that makes a word, an acronym that makes a word. So that's probably called something, isn't it?
It probably is, yes.
Yeah, I thought you might know because you're more intelligent than I am. But anyway, so why don't we start with your first one, define. So what happens in the define step?
So this is really about defining the audience, right? This is looking at who they are, how many are there, where are they, what's the total addressable, right?
Yes.
And so keeping in mind, sometimes total addressable doesn't have to be massive.
Yeah.
It may be that you have a very targeted, but highly interested group, small subset. So the actual number isn't cast in stone. It's not the bigger the better, right? But you do also need to look at who else is servicing that addressable audience. If you're in a saturated market, then that's not to say you shouldn't be doing what you're doing, but you're going to need to find a very unique way of either communicating or the solution you're providing, right?
Yeah.
And we get a little further into that. So, who are your audience? Who are they as people, not just buyers, right? Again, that whole big end-to-end solution, and thinking about not only what do they want to buy, but what are their habits? Where are they? Where are you going to find them? What do they like to do? What's the context in which they would be engaging with you and or your product / service?
Yeah. I like this. Sorry.
No, go ahead.
Because also I think you were talking about audience size there. And I think I don't know if you actually quoted Seth Godin, but I remember you saying something like minimum viable audience, right? Rather than maximum, right?
Yeah, exactly.
So, yeah.
And so you do all that through like persona research and research firms and data and focus groups and Google searches and interviews and all of the, the usual things.
Yeah.
But one of the last things that a lot of organizations don't do is, what we said on the webinar was, walk a mile in their shoes. So really look at who they are, do some original and very specific research, right? So everything else, absolutely do that first prelim stuff on what you can find, but do some original research, do some experimentation, go to where they are, see the environment, not just the pictures and what, Google is saying, but, actually know and be who they are. So that you can learn about them in terms of, I get it. Get that real life context.
Yeah. So, we're just in this first define stage. Is it at this stage you would sort of find somebody in your actual CRM who is this person? Because that's what I always like to do, is that proof point of this person exists and it isn't just a fantasy dream of marketing in some, over pizza in a conference room. We've actually, we've nailed this person. This is it could
Jane
be both or whatever.
Both situations apply. You may be looking for a new or a unique audience.
True. Yeah,
so that's where the data, again, that's where AI, you want to throw like something like really good at a chat GPT.
Yeah.
Slam them with like, here's all our data. Who are we missing? You're going to have to prompt a little better than that, but essentially that. But, you're going to start from a point of whether it's an epiphany in the shower or whether it's the data pointing you. But, why do you think they're your audience? And you start from there.
Yeah.
This is proving that out.
Yeah. So that's quite a big chunk of work, that first define stage. So what's number 2? What's the discover phase?
So once you said, okay, yes, right, this audience makes sense. This is who we want to go after. This is about learning their entire journey. So their end to end, the story of who they are, how do they discover new products or services? How do they try things? How do they like to learn? What is their typical channel approach? Are they social? Is it just digital? Are they, going in and trying things if it's a product? Are they experimenters? Are they laggards as far as adoption? What's their MO from that perspective? And then thinking also about really digging into the research. So that original research, if you've actually interviewed some people, what are the emotions that go along with it? One of the things that we showed on the deck during the webinar, and the deck will be available after this because you're so great at posting that stuff, is the journey that you're mapping. It isn't just about what they're doing. It's the trigger that made them do what they did. So how were they feeling before they X? Was there a problem? Were they super happy? Were they excited? What is it that's triggering that next action?
Right.
Understanding that is one of the most important things, because that not only tells you their mindset, but it allows you to frame the experience in the right context.
Plus, I think, I'm a big fan of clustering personas around needs. And I think that you talked about that in the define stage, isn't it? So that is much easier once you understand what their needs are, right? And you can map that need. How do I satisfy this need? Well, here's my journey for satisfying that need, or here's their journey for satisfying that need. So when you're mapping the journey, and, obviously this show is predominantly B2B, are we talking about, you would then be mapping the people that are coming in and out of this journey, right? So during a purchase, like the finance guys, for example, don't usually get involved until towards the end, but you'll have an influencer or somebody with the need at the beginning who sparks the whole thing, but they may not be involved in it. So is that, yes.
Yeah. How are they finding answers? Are they even finding answers? Are they looking for an answer? Are you trying to solve a problem that's not actually a problem? Right. So knowing who to bring in and what to look at. And this is why, again, you need to have the entire broad spectrum of the organization's perspective on the audience to understand how they're interacting not only with you as a marketer or a content creator, but also with the rest of the org, because we are not the only, we'd like to think we're the epicenter, but there's other parts of the organization that make it tick as well. And they have valuable information, talk again, customer service. When they call in about X, are they excited? Are they frustrated? Are they angry? What is the problem they're trying to solve? And when I say problem, it doesn't have to necessarily be a problem. It's in every journey. We have the infinity loop. We've seen it in a straight line. We've seen it in a circle, a racetrack. We've seen it so many different ways. But the thing to remember is that every journey, the only consistent thing is that every journey starts with a need. So it's about understanding that need that triggers that phase of the journey.
Yeah. I like that. I like that idea. I like the talking to the rest of the business, because I think that sometimes in marketing we tend to be, I was going to say we get put into our own little box, but we also tend to stay in our own little box as well. And the first people to talk to on this stuff is sales, because they're hearing that. I know that customer service, absolutely, if you've got a sufficiently mature mature products, but often sales are the ones that are hearing the problem in the language of the customer, which doesn't always percolate into that mythical conference room I was talking about that we marketers are sitting in, right? That we
and
make
sales are notoriously, and I apologize to all of my friends who are salespeople, are notoriously territorial about the information that they have.
True. Yeah.
Now, I will call them a business development person instead of a salesperson.
Yeah.
That is the difference between business BD and sales, is that BD tends to listen for the problem. What are you trying to solve? A salesperson is, you are a nail, I am a hammer, and I'm just going to nail it through as hard as I can, no matter whether it fits or not, in order to get my numbers, right? And that's a whole other webinar about aligned metrics and things like sales being held accountable to successful adoption or use or, 6 month, 1 year satisfaction kind of thing. It can't just be about the numbers of widgets that they sold. Right.
True.
Nothing's going to change otherwise. So, the next step is how do you solve that problem? Like what are the challenges, needs, and wishes of the individuals, and why are they that, right? It's not just what they are, but why are they barriers? What's behind the wish or the want?
Yeah.
And why is it a need? So stepping back and understanding, again, that prequel almost to addressing it is essential in addressing it correctly.
In defense of sales, a little bit, not in defense of sales. One thing.
I hit a button there?
No, not at all. It's just that what I've been doing recently, and I've now just completely stolen your expression of more cowbell. Put it in everything now. I love it. But when sales come to you and say they want more cowbell, this is meaning more video, presence on TickFace, whatever it is they're asking for that's ridiculous, right? It's a good opportunity to say, well, why? Why do you think we need that? What is it the customers are telling you? What are you hearing? So that you can start that, because they're asking for something. So therefore, you've got an opportunity to engage with them and say, well, why? And then you can build a bit of intelligence around your personas, around their journey based on, so they may not come to you with the data, as you say, Cathy, right? Because they've got their own perception and needs of their own, but that's a good time to start that conversation, I think, when they ask for more cowbell.
Absolutely.
I even looked up whether I could, whether the domain more cowbell was available. So,
I'm sure it's gone.
I think it's a great name for a marketing blog. Anyway, so we've done define and then we've discovered. So during the discover phase, we've then mapped it against the customer journey. And we've also mapped the entire buying group by the sounds of things across the buyer's journey. And we've also mapped, I think, the influencers, I think we were mentioning earlier on, who might trigger this and who might move us on to the next phase. So your next phase is design. Tell us about that.
Yeah. So as I said, this is where, you're getting into the context of the challenges, needs, and wishes. So why behind them, essentially. And through that, you're looking at what would help these audiences in the challenges. What could you do as an organization to alleviate that challenge, to solve that problem, help them solve that problem.
Yeah.
And there's usually more than one way, right? There's more than one thing. So of that laundry list of things you could do, which makes the most sense to address? So what for you as an organization, for what you offer, what you're trying to achieve, what you're trying to do in terms of think, feel, do, which ones should you go after?
Yeah. What I like about this as well is you've got to be really strict about starting at number 1 and working to number 3 in this, rather than starting off with your product and working backwards going, here, I've got a list of features. Do not reverse engineer.
Do not reverse engineer.
I've got a list of features. How can I plug these into needs that the customer has? Do you also map during your process with your clients? Do you also map the needs that maybe you're not, the company you're working with doesn't directly solve those problems, but they are kind of in adjacent, or they're in they're relevant in some way to the process?
Yeah, those naturally come up because this is a brainstorming thing, right?
Yeah,
this is where you want to what are all of the ways, hashtag all the things,
all the things
that we could do possibly to address this, and how. And then it's deciding, well, yes, we could do that, but it doesn't necessarily make sense for us as a primary. So that becomes maybe a secondary or tertiary offering, right? But it's narrowing down is where do we want to focus on? Mm-hmm. What do we not want to be known for? Where can we have the biggest impact?
Yeah. I think that sometimes those adjacent topics are a really good fuel for your content marketing strategy, because you're just demonstrating empathy to the prospect in general in their lives, not in their lives. That's ridiculous. I mean, I'm not a big advocate of knowing whether they have pets or even necessarily what gender the persona is, because it's probably not relevant to whether they buy or not, right? So,
nope.
So I'm not really into all the demographics thing. I'm more into the value graphics and how they feel about stuff. But where was I going with this? Yeah, I think that the problem that I was just talking about around where some organizations take their list of features and then map them backwards against pain and need, not only is that bad because you're not learning anything, but the other thing is you don't get those adjacents. You don't do the deep work about, well, what is this person really thinking and what's the stumbling block here? Well, so for example, sorry, I'm rambling now. I know it's your interview, but so for example, back in the early part of my career when I was in pre-sales, I worked in the government space because I started my career in government. So therefore, Ian, you can do the government space. And I worked with a sales guy, and the sales guy actually knew the government procurement process, and he actually knew it better than the buyers. So what was useful to them was this guy was able to help them, guide them through the procurement process.
Yep.
So that I always think, and I've always carried that as an example of where sometimes our buyer may have a pain that we can help with, but it's not about our product and service or any of the things we normally talk about, but we might be able to help them with that.
Well, and I think too there, when you try and reverse engineer the product into how we can solve things is you don't want to be known to be able to solve everything. Jack of all trades, master of none. So by doing it the other way and starting with the audience, which is where everything in marketing should start, content, product development, support, all of the things. Yeah. Then you're really able to say, okay, well, one, what do we excel at? What are we really good at? And what do we differentiate compared to others, right? Because you want to be looking at your competition as well. And I don't know about you, but I think a lot of people, when you compare things side by each, whether product or service, if you have something that says, you know what, we kick butt at these 5 things, we do this stuff as well, but this is where we sing. Yeah. You are going to get so much more commitment and like you're in before you even talk to them kind of thing, because they see themselves in it. Yeah. When it's all wishy-washy, 100 tick all the boxes, you're like, okay, well, you and the rest of the world, right? Yeah, so it really distinguishes you.
Absolutely. And that goes back to the point you made at the beginning about the size of the audience, isn't it? Even if you're in a saturated market, you're finding your tribe. And the only way you're going to find your tribe is by being different. And the only way you're going to be different is if you're not for everybody, right?
Exactly.
You're going to have to, and companies that I've worked with struggle so much with this, that they don't want to be too pointed with the language on their website or their marketing language because they're worried about offending somebody. But you almost need to lean right into that and say, these are our people, right? And the other thing as well, to your point there is, again, that needs to be audience driven, right? Because if you talk to the CEO or the CTO about a product and he'll go, here are the top 5 things. No, they're the 5 things you think are sexy and lovely and you enjoyed producing them. The customer actually gets the most value out of 7 and 8. Oh, but they're boring. They're the ones they're getting value out of, and they're the ones we need to lead with, right? So you get that. Okay, so I've distracted you slightly with some of my waffling.
That's okay.
So we went define, discover, design. Now this one is non-obvious, and you just admitted that when you do your alliteration, sometimes it's a bit of a squeeze in. I'm curious, what does decide mean?
So deciding is putting that stake in the ground. That is, we are not going to be the jack of all trades. We are going to center in and be known for something, right? So it's having a point of view. Yeah. It's being willing to, and I mean, so many vendors in our industry are not good at this, but leaning into what you do well, right? So what are we known for? What can we deliver that our competition can't? How do we meet the needs differently? Even if everybody else is meeting, how do we do it differently? Yeah. And how can we solve for something that others can't or won't or don't talk about doing, right? So where is that gap? Where's the niche that we can own per se?
Yeah.
And I can tell you, I've seen, again, sticking to our industry, where organizations have at least taken a little bit of this to heart. It's made a big difference. Right. Yeah. I always, when I work with vendors, it's like, what do you want to be known for?
Yeah.
Like, you don't want to boil the ocean. Like, what do you want when somebody comes to your site and you say, blah, 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 they go, these guys know me.
Yeah.
This company understands my pain, understands my problem. Yeah. And once you narrow that down and are able to look at something more specifically and holistically on a smaller scale, then you can start coming up with that unique point of view, that differentiator on why us, not them, right?
Yeah.
And once you have that and you need that, only then can you decide and make an informed and good decision about how you're going to deliver that message, right? Are you going to go traditional, like use blog posts and that kind of thing, but in a very unique way? Or are you going to do something unique in a common way? So the example that we used during the webinar was on two things. Is one of our organizations, they chose a very niche subset topic, but talked about it in an online magazine. So very traditional, common delivery channel. But the focus of the magazine was very niche, very specific. Nobody else was doing it, right?
Right.
Alternatively, you look at doing it from doing something that is available out there. The example we gave was, there's an app out there for athletic coaches, team coaches, that has extreme weather warnings built into it. So things like lightning, high winds, thunderstorms. So, I mean, there's a gajillion and 4 weather apps. But not built in that specific way that geolocates and keeps their team safe.
Yeah,
so
nice.
it's about how are you going to make a difference and be different to be noticed, because it's a very noisy world out there.
Nice. Also, like, to draw you back a little bit there about the deciding, is it also deciding what you're not as well? I mean, you might not actually publish this, but is it important for the team to understand we're not this, we're not these people, we don't do this very well, let's be honest. And that do you have those kinds of conversations as well?
Say that question again. I'm not sure I understand.
Deciding what you're not. So there's a big decision here in your decide phase of what you are and what you want to lean into and what the biggest features and where you're strongest. But also, is there yes.
Yes, 100%. So I totally get what you're saying now that I've confuddled you. It's as important to know who you are not or what you don't do as it is to know what you do.
Yeah.
There is clarity in that, because as you start building out messaging and offering products and, developing and where the direction of that, drawing a line and saying, you know what, we don't do that.
Yeah.
Hard stop. And it's an easy answer. Somebody asks, do you X? And it's like, no, we do not. Yeah. That is not where we're going. I can point you to, 5 different organizations that we think are doing a good job on that, and happy to push you there. Yeah. Again, that reinforces your expertise and caliber in what you do, because there is clarity in what you don't do.
Yeah. I also, when I write about this, I talk about this, I always think about, advice from sales, which is the two things that sales like is a yes, but they also like a quick no. Because if they get a quick no, they can move on to the next opportunity. A slow no is the worst thing you can do with a salesperson. And I think it's a bit like that, isn't it? That our marketing is offering a quick yes or no. They are for us or they're not for us, right? And if you kind of meanie around all this shit and then draw somebody into the funnel, into the process, and they discover, 6 weeks into this thing that really you're not for us, then we've all wasted our time, haven't we? So I think that who we are and who we aren't is really important, and we should be bold about that. Yeah.
Yep.
Yeah. I like
totally
that.
Agree.
All right. So we get to the last of your fifth. The last of your fifth. The fifth of your fifth. Fifth of your 5, which is draft. So what are we doing at the draft phase, Cathy?
So now you know who you are, what you do, what you're offering, what you have to offer. It's time to start writing your success statements, right? So this is the problem we're solving, and this is how we fix it.
Right.
And in doing that, you're validating keywords. So using the language that you've heard. So if you've heard that, snow removal is a challenge, then use those words. We will address your snow removal challenges. Like, be overt in it. You can be cheeky and clever and whatnot, depending on your brand's personality and approach, but use the key words that you've heard, reiterate that back so that people see themselves in the problem statement that you're solving for, right? It's also about the why, we're gonna do this for you so that you can, and you will get X out of it, right? It's the value statement as well. So it's important to have that success metric and value statement mixed into that. And by doing that work, and it's not easy. And I will warn everybody, there will be a lot of debate and minutia arguments. And, I like this word better than that word. But it's really important because this becomes the baseline for your content architect. See, now I'm all tongue-tied. Content architecture, right? Because you're defining your value. You're defining your success metrics. You're defining how you're going to deliver that and who you're targeting. Like, what is it, the why you're targeting?
No, the way that you've just described that, there are a number of things where I could have interrupted you and said, oh, that's good for this, or that's good for this. Because if you think about every single marketing motion you're going to make after this, so if you're doing pay-per-click, for example, that specific language that the customer is using to get them from one stage to the next stage is going to be essential. There's no point in you using the internal knowledge way that you describe your category. If your category is described as snow removal by your customers, don't say any other highfalutin words that may confuse them. They're going to say, I need a solution to remove my snow. So I think that's really cool. And also, the other thing about this work as well, Cathy, as I was listening to you, I was thinking, you're going to need to do that work anyway, right? So if you're starting a PPC, to use PPC as just one example of the many that we could have used there, is somebody's going to need to sit down and do the deep work of what are my keywords. Whereas if you've done this work, you can just go, oh, here they are. Right? Exactly. So they're going to be right there in there. So that's cool. So those are your 5 stages. And I think, as you said, I'll share a link to the actual presentation. Yes. That's all right. Yeah, cool. And yours 5 stages were define, discover, design, decide, and draft. And I think it was a fantastic webinar. And is there anything I missed? Anything concluding thoughts for that webinar?
I don't think so. I think, again, the big thing is the takeaways, obviously the 5 steps, but include a broad spectrum of people from the organization when you're developing these. And keep in mind that, when you're building a persona, make sure there's demographic details, right? Make sure that there's attitudinal and cognitive details. So, pain points, feelings, triggers, those kind of things, goals and motivations, behavioral details. Those things are really, really important. There's a debate as to whether or not there should be pictures or names, because that could bias you to think, oh, you know what? It's just, middle-aged men or, young mothers. So, if you're going to include a picture, great, but have, either a group picture, like it could be anybody, or what's even better is use iconography. So come up with a symbol that identifies it as kind of a short form internally, so people know that, oh, when I see that, that's the persona that I'm talking to.
That's really important. I really like that point, because I've done this differently in the past, and what I've done before is given the persona like a name. This is our this is the most important person that cares about, the most senior person that cares about the problem, or something. That's a bad example, but something like that, right? Not a name. And I find then it's hard for people to bond with that, right? Absolutely. As you say, that people like to bond with a person, but then again, as you say, if you to say, well, it's the CEO, and then do a white balding bloke on the screen, then it's like, No, it's not that either, So I agree with you. It's getting that right, isn't it?
Yeah.
But also that goes back to my point I made earlier on, is that if you can find somebody in your CRM who's this person and then describe them by that name, that's a real person, and customer service know this person, probably somebody in sales seeing it, oh, that's Cathy.
Yeah.
Oh yeah, Cathy. Let me think like Cathy. I've met Cathy. I know Cathy. I did a podcast with her the other day.
Yeah.
All right, cool. I could honestly, I could talk to you about this stuff for hours, but I know we've both got a hard stop. So when's your next webinar?
January. So in the new year. And we are going to talk about teams and the importance of teams and impact on success.
Right. And that's not the Microsoft product, I'm assuming, because that has no impact on anybody's success.
No, it is not. The bane of my existence these days. Yes, no.
All right. So the deck that we've just talked through will be available on the Content Advisory and Seventh Bear website.
Correct.
Under the Insight section. And speaking of Seventh Bear, and Robert has alluded to this a couple of times on the podcast, but it seems to be gathering some momentum now. So you're moving from the Content Advisory to Seventh Bear. Tell us a little bit about that.
Yes. So we're super excited. We are rebranding. Robert and I have been working together for more than a decade. And we thought it was time for a change. It was time to be a little less content specific, as our name is very direct. Yeah. And really, it doesn't talk to what we do anymore. We certainly still are, as everybody knows with me, still geeking out on content. We still do all of those things, but we've done a lot of work with organizations in helping them be better organizations. So, team structure and evolution and making the most of what they have. So not necessarily, we still help companies find new technologies, but let's stop and take a beat and let's see what you have and let's use that. So we talk about bringing organizations, bringing teams to the technology that they have rather than technology to the teams. So this is just more reflective about us and who we are today.
I also think, it's the same for the work that I do as well. If you're busy, you go in there as a content advisor, you start figuring out what the problem is with the content. It's actually something else. And it's the same with a marketing strategy. You go and you talk to somebody about their marketing strategy and say, so what are your goals as a company? Well, and you're like,
that's a really good question. Thank you for asking.
Yeah. So you don't have any OKRs either? No. Okay. So I think that's a great, and I love the name Seventh Bear. And I was quite shocked to discover that, not shocked, the wrong word. I was delighted for you that the URL was available and it was all, because it's got a lovely story behind it. So I think that's fantastic.
Yes. Yeah, we're really excited.
Cool. So I'm hoping that you will have time to come back on the show in the new year. And so in the meantime, I'd like to wish you happy holidays.
Well, thank you. I will keep coming back as long as you'll have me.
Splendid. And I'll see you next month. Thank you very much.
Awesome. Thanks, Ian.
Cheers, Cathy. Bye-bye. Thank you, Cathy. And as I mentioned, I will be including links to the presentation that Cathy shared, the other webinar she was on last week, and also the next webinar that the Content Advisory or Seventh Bear now have scheduled. And I already have Cathy booked in for the new year. So I'm looking forward to that. Right. That time of the week to retire to the Rockstar CMO virtual bar for a cocktail and a marketing thought with Cathy's colleague and chief troublemaker at the Content Advisory, Robert Rose. Good evening, Robert. What are you drinking?
Oh, hello, my friend, and welcome to the bar. We are in the season. It is tis the season to be jolly, and I will be jolly well glad to see this year disappear in the rearview mirror. But nonetheless, we have some fun, festive cocktails planned for the last couple of weeks of our time together. But this week, we're going to go with a bourbon cocktail.
Good stuff.
Next week will be even more festive. We'll definitely celebrate Christmas. This one's more just a general holiday season cocktail, and it's made with bourbon, easy to make. And the key here is to make more than one. right? In other words, you make this in, whether you do this as a pitcher, you do you, but you can do this as a, mix 2 or 3 or 4 of these together at a time to make a group. It's good for a group of cocktails. So I'm going to start with maybe let's say we're making it for, I don't know, 3 or 4 people. We're going to start with 8 ounces of bourbon, and then we're going to go with 8 ounces of orange juice, freshly squeezed if you have it. No pulp would be great if you don't have the pulp. And then a little pomegranate juice, maybe half as much, maybe a quarter as much pomegranate juice. It'll give it a beautiful color, by the way. Then soda water and a little bit of soda water just to sort of get things going. And then ice. And then, of course, a little bit of water to sort of just, mute down the bubbles a bit. And so you're going to put all that into something, and whether it's a big container, a pitcher, or whatever, and you're going to stir it like crazy. And then you're going to pour it. And I like actually not pouring it over ice, but actually, using the ice to sort of cool it all down. And either one big rock, put one big rock in a glass and pour it over that, or ice if you want to, or just pour it into like a martini glass or something like that. And you have what we call the bourbon holiday. It's very straightforward. Bourbon holiday cocktail, very easy to make. And there you go. It's basically bourbon, orange juice, and pomegranate juice and soda water put together.
Nice. And it's nice, easy day drinking.
It is. It's a day drinker. It's absolutely a morning drinker. Because I don't usually like bourbon in the morning. But this time of year, we wake up and the bar is open.
You got your fruit in there, mate. It's breakfast.
Oh yeah, you got your breakfast. You're full breakfast. You're only missing some sausage, some beans, and maybe a little pudding. Yeah. Full English breakfast.
So where are we going to be drinking these fine drinks in the holiday season, mate?
We're going to find ourselves somewhere festive. And so I think, one of my favorite places to be during the holidays is in London. And because the Christmas decorations are so wonderful there, and it just feels like the right time of year, and, and all of that. So I think we find some bar, pub, not a pub, but maybe a bar or a nice place where we can ensconce ourselves in a dark booth, have some of these holidays and sit by a fire and basically and enjoy these. And it's an afternoon, right? It's an afternoon that we're enjoying these. It's not a nighttime.
No,
work our way
in London. It'll already be dark.
Yeah, right. Well, exactly.
That sounds splendid. And when conversation turns to marketing, what are we going to be talking about this week, my friend?
We are going to talk about friction. You've heard me talk about friction quite a bit over the last couple of months, because I think it's an important thing. But mostly I've been talking about it from the concept of us, right? Building slowness and building deeper thought and all of that into our processes. And now I want to just mention why I think it's better for the customer experience as well. And there's a fantastic quote. It's usually attributed to author William Gibson, the sort of sci-fi author, who says, the future is already here. It's just not evenly distributed yet. And I think that really captures where AI is and automation of what we do with our customer experiences, because it's here. We've been able to do it, but not everybody does it, right? It's just not evenly distributed. But the interesting thing is that friction itself in the customer process is something that, especially in B2B, we have really forgotten a lot about the value of it. And what I mean by that is that we've spent 20 years as marketers, especially in B2B, sort of eliminate friction, right? That's been the mantra. Make it as smooth as possible, as fast as possible, close those leads, remove any friction, keep it smooth, basically remove any pause in the buyer's journey, et cetera, and sort of been myopically focused on that. And the thing is B2B products, services, they're inherently complex, right? They're inherently ripe for friction. And when we start thinking about, if we're going to buy something complex like a marketing cloud solution, or, a complex CRM system, or if we're going to buy some implementation of a factory machine that's going to have to get implemented into our whatever it is we're trying to buy, it's inherently fraught and ripe for pauses, right? And we talk about this all the time, right? In terms of B2B marketing, it's like, well, where are they hanging up? Where are our leads hanging? How do we remove the friction to get there?
Yeah.
And what I'd like to suggest is that the answer is not to remove all the friction, but it's to have the right friction in the right spot. And I'll give you a couple of examples of what I mean by this and why I think it's good. So as an example, right, today, one of the things that we're doing is we're collecting all kinds of first-party data to personalize things, right? And we're focusing so much on who they are and what their intent is that we sort of try and grease the funnel as they come through. So the idea is put exactly the right next step for them to take so that they take it as fast as possible. And the idea is that where we're seeing some success is a B2B company that looks at that intent data or that first party data and says, where are they looking to take a breath? Like, and what are they getting tagged with, or what is the content that they're getting presented when they are taking a breath? Is it is it some urgent, like, you better act now or you better, you're going to die? Or is it, while you're taking a breath, let us make you feel better about taking that breath? And that is providing a lot higher quality types of engagement with customers through the pipeline, because they're going to take the breath. The question is, how do we react to that part of the buyer's journey when they're taking the breath? Are we trying to push them through the door, or are we actually letting them take the breath and differentiating in that moment? And I'll give you another example, which is, so often what we're trying to do is sell the easiest thing to sell, right?
Yeah.
And this is especially true in B2B marketing. And so what we try and do is we say, we have everything, right? It's your choice, right? It's absolutely your choice. And I've told this story before on this show, but the great example of it was when I was you and I were both part of enterprise web content management companies. And as a CMO for that company, I learned this lesson the hard way, which was whenever someone would come in and they would compare us to Adobe, and what they would say when they would come in is say, tell me about your translation and localization workflow capabilities. And we were trying to eliminate any kind of friction. So we would say, whatever you want to do is possible.
Yeah.
Right. Whatever you can dream up in terms of your workflow. And what we misunderstood, and we're certainly taught a lesson by how Adobe handled it, was that's not what customers wanted to hear.
No.
They didn't want a blank slate. They wanted to hear exactly how the right way to solve that translation and localization problem was.
Yep.
So in other words, they wanted a canned solution. Because they were going to take a pause there, and they wanted to understand what best practices and what the way to look at it was. They didn't see themselves as experts. And so basically, yes, anything you want gave them no confidence that we had any kind of point of view on our solution. So thinking about how you look at pauses in the buyer's journey to say, hey, many customers like you choose this package or this solution, or this is recommended for you, or editor's choice, or whatever it is, you can purposely slow down the decision-making process, but you're guiding them to a better outcome. And then the last one that I would mention is what I call turning the dead zone into an engagement zone. Because in B2B marketing especially, there's this, almost every product or service has what I call the dead zone, which is that really awkward gap after the customer, your client, says yes, but probably while procurement or the contract is getting signed and preparation for the solution that's going to be delivered or implemented or whatever's going to happen. And there's that gap there. And that's usually when the salespeople are telling marketing, don't talk to the customer, right? Don't screw anything up, right? Don't mess it up. And the sales team, they get no communication, right? And here's the thing we need to remember is for anything that's a considered purchase like that in B2B, the customer has got a lot of anxiety at that particular time. They've said what they're saying yes to is the end point for you, but it's the day one for them. And they're thinking about this giant project that they have staring them in the face. And so slowing things down here and adding intentional, valuable, whether it's onboarding or whether it's an engagement series or something to help them feel less anxiety about what they're about to embark upon can be a huge way to start your project off on the right foot.
Yeah.
So that you're building that loyalty from day one. So those are just 3 ideas. And I'm sure there are many others of where intentionally introducing a slow or a friction-filled part of the process can actually build a better customer, a more engaged customer, and perhaps a more loyal customer.
Yeah. That your story about Adobe is so spot on because it's probably exactly at the same time I was in pre-sales and we learned the same lesson, right? Is that you think the right answer is whatever you want. But like you say, the prospect is looking for guidance on best practice and is hoping you're the expert, not them, right? So
right.
That story is exactly the same in at least 2 vendors that I was with in that time. So it wasn't just where you were, and that's absolutely perfect because that's also the other thing as well. Because today we had your colleague Cathy on the show, and we were talking about personas, and we were talking about mapping the customer journey. And I love the idea of overlaying this onto that work because where are these points of pause or of the dead zone? And I love your dead zone because you're absolutely right. That's the point at which, when we map our customer journey, sold it, done, that's the end, right? But in actual fact, as you say, for that customer, that's the start. But also it's the continuing engagement with you to them to become an advocate, right? The journey
exactly right.
Yeah,
So it's this fascinating thing where we map that. So in varying degree, and I don't know if Cathy showed this or not, sort of the emotional wave of the customer journey, right? How are they feeling in that moment, right? That trigger moment. And you go, okay, what is it we're delivering there? The knee-jerk reaction to like looking at that on a whiteboard or on a slide or something like that is we go, hey, that's the trigger point. How do we speed that up? Like, how do I, in other words, if they're like, oh, they're feeling bad and they're looking at competition and they're having trouble differentiating, and you go, the first question we always ask as marketers to say, great, we identify that they're feeling anxiety there. We're identifying the fact that they need differentiation of solutions or whatever the trigger is. And our knee-jerk reaction is to say, how do I deliver something to them right now that pushes them to a direction?
Yeah.
And instead, if we asked a different question, what is it that they need in that moment of pause? And it might literally be something that, hey, here's something you haven't considered yet. You need to slow down and think about what it is you want to do. Or, hey, if you're having anxiety around trying to fix a solution that is actually going to, address all of these things, let's take a look at this large and long how-to guide, right? That is naturally going to make you want to pause for a week. And that's the kind of thing that might differentiate you even more.
Yeah. And if you understand that customer journey, and I really like this idea of really figuring out this point of pause, is it might be that they're completely overwhelmed at that point, and whelming them some more is not going to help. You're going to come over as being too pushy, right? It might be, look, I just need to take a moment and consider my options and move forward. And you saying you're trying to compress that period from them and really, really take that opportunity to push, it may be completely wrong time to push, mightn't it?
Exactly right.
Yeah,
exactly right.
Yeah, I love that. All right, mate. So where on earth am I going to find some content that might give me a little bit of pause for thought and friction, mate?
Well, you might find it. So we've been taking this idea of valuable friction to heart. And as you know, this is a little bit of a scoop. I don't know if Cathy showed this or not. We are now 7th Bear. And so if you go to seventhbear.com, you'll see a site that looks remarkably similar to Content Advisory, aside from the fact that the messaging is very different and the value proposition is very different. And the focus of our thought leadership is a little more like this than it has been in other areas. So we're excited for it. And that's going to be our new little hovel on the internet.
You're always changing, man. But also, I think it's good for you. It's probably good for your audience that you're changing the name but keeping the brand for now as a sort of a transition to ease people into that new moniker, right? I guess I think
we're basically at a certain point we'll start forwarding everything over there. But that's the idea is that it's
nice.
Same great people. Slightly different mission, but the hopefully as good or even a little better stuff that we're writing about.
Good stuff that will give us pause for thought. And then when we spin the dial on the interwebs, we're finding you in the same places, Robert. Or where are you?
Yeah, I'm. Where I've sort of. It's funny. I've been giving up a little bit on Threads because I'm sort of like everybody seems to be moving over to Blue Sky, which I'm enjoying very, very much. So I'm enjoying Blue Sky quite a bit, and I'm at robertrose.me on Blue Sky. And of course, LinkedIn. I would love to connect with everybody on LinkedIn.
Splendid. Well, actually, I'll add your Blue Sky link to the show notes because I don't think I've got that in there at the moment, but I've certainly got your LinkedIn one. And most importantly for me, my friend, will you be in the bar next week?
I will indeed.
I look forward to it, mate. I'll see you then. Thank you, Robert. And as you heard from Cathy and Robert there, the Content Advisory is making a pivot to Seventh Bear. I'm looking forward to seeing how that develops. So that's a wrap on episode 248 of the Rockstar CMO effing marketing podcast. Thank you for dropping a dime into your podcasting jukebox, selecting our track and jiving along with us. I've been your host, Ian Truscott, and you can find links to me and the team here and all the things we discussed in the show notes on rockstarcmo.com, as well as our blog, newsletter, and all of our previous episodes. Finally, I'd love to hear from you. So please say hello. If you connect on LinkedIn, please say you're a listener. And of course, if you like this, help spread the word by rating or reviewing us in your favourite podcast app, or just keep listening. I'm glad you're here. Next week, friend of the show, Dennis Shaw, sends us into the holidays with a very appropriate conversation about community. And Robert serves up a seasonal cocktail in our virtual bar. Until then, have a great week. And I hope you can join us here next Saturday at Rockstar CMO FM.
You may know you're listening to this show along the Marketing Podcast Network, but did you know there are other great shows on MPN to help your business? Hennika Watkins-Porter hosts The Entrepreneurial You, empowering entrepreneurs with insights on leadership, business, and success. Hennika, tell listeners what to expect from your show.
So we provide innovative business strategies and practical solutions to common entrepreneurial challenges.
And where can people subscribe?
Find us at hennikawatkinsporter.com, as well as the Marketing Podcast Network at marketingpodcasts.net, or search for it wherever you get your podcasts.
You heard her. Go subscribe. This podcast is heard along the Marketing Podcast Network. For more great marketing podcasts, visit marketingpodcasts.net.